If I were to give you a stat line, do you think that you could guess the NFL player? I mean, come on. Be honest with yourself, because in today's show, some of you may end up getting a little bit exposed. Because today, we're not playing the lazy fantasy manager game. We're not just looking at season averages, we're not scrolling fantasy points per game, and we're definitely not falling for those surface level box scores. Because context really matters in fantasy football. Players leave the game hurt all the time. Players get traded mid-season. Some guys don't even sniff a real role until like week 8. And then people will look at their full season averages and say, hey, see, I told you he wasn't very good. And no, that's not the case. You just didn't look deep enough. So today, we're cutting the fluff. And every player we're discussing today, I'm only looking at the games where they played at least 50% of the snaps. No 14 snap fluke weeks, no decoy games, no fake usage, just real opportunity, real production. So let's see how good your NFL knowledge actually is. So guess this quarterback. If you know it, put the name down below in the comment section, because he averaged 22.1 completions per game. That's 5th in the NFL, more than guys like Drake May and Trevor Lawrence. He averaged 32.7 pass attempts per game, 7th most in the NFL. On the season, his team averaged the 4th most pass attempts per game. He had a completion percentage of 67.6%. 10th in the NFL, higher than guys like Joe Burrow and Jordan Love. He averaged 238.4 passing yards per game, 10th in the NFL, higher than guys like Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix, and Joe Burrow. He had a game-winning drive in 30% of his games started. He had 2 fourth quarter comebacks, averaged 4 carries and 4.1 yards per carry on the ground, averaged 16.4 fantasy points per game, which is more than Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, and Sam Darnold. His 17-game pace was over 4,000 yards passing, and even with just 20 touchdowns, it would make him a top 15 fantasy quarterback in 2026. Last year, he had 13 total touchdowns and didn't even play a full season. Now, his current projected fantasy ADP is to go undrafted. Who is this player? It's Tyler Shuck, quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. But here's why I think he could do it again. He's in a Kellen Moore offense. 4 of his last 6 seasons calling plays has resulted in his team being inside the top 6 teams in the NFL when it comes to passing volume. Their defense is getting old, and there's some free agents out there, guys like Demario Davis and Cam Jordan. They're both going to be on the wrong side of 37 this year. They're both free agents and have a huge price tag. And then lastly, the running game is invisible in New Orleans, and Alvin Kamara could be gone in 2026. So a high-volume passing offense on a team whose defense could get worse, and the running game is nothing to really worry about, we could be looking at a whole lot of Tyler Shuck in 2026. Now let's do a running back. Can you guess this NFL player? He averaged 16 rush attempts per game. That was 7th in the NFL. 66.8 rushing yards per game. 13th in the NFL. 4.6 targets, 3.5 receptions, and 29.5 receiving yards a game. Basically, the same as Devon Achane. His snap share, 64.3%, right up there with Chase Brown. He had 3.84 yards created per touch. That's more than James Cook. How about 3.8 evaded tackles per game, which is more than Derrick Henry? I mean, his 17-game pace is like 1,600 total yards and 10-plus touchdowns. Now, those numbers are crazy, but even if he regresses down to, say, 1,200 total yards and 8 touchdowns with 40 receptions, he's a top 15 to 20 running back in fantasy football. His current projected ADP in round 6 through 8, right there in the middle. Who is this player? It's Cam Skattebo, running back of the New York Giants. But here is why I think he could do it again. They added John Harbaugh as their new head coach. He has had a top 10 rushing offense in 13 of his 18 seasons in the NFL. He's a fan favorite who puts butts in the seats on a bad team, and Malik Neighbors returns, and that only helps keep the box a little bit light. Now, obviously, there's some questions here, right? He's coming off of a major injury. And because of that, a lot of people are going to bypass him going into 2026. Everything I see, though, shows him being 100% ready by week 1 of the NFL season. And we already know this dude is a lightning rod, a bowling ball. He's going to be a part of this offense, and if he's healthy, he'll be a steal this year. But now we move on to wide receiver. Keep your guesses going below. How about 7.3 targets per game? Right up there with guys like Ted McMillan, Zay Flowers, and Devontae Smith. 4.9 receptions per game. That's more than guys like Cortland Sutton and Emeka Egbuka. 55.3 receiving yards per game. That's right up there with Devontae Adams. He was top 12 in the NFL in slot snaps. 71.8% of his targets were deemed catchable, and he was the wide receiver 18 overall in fantasy from week 10 on last year. Now his 17-game pace puts him over 80 catches and a verged 1,000-yard wide receiver. With just 5 touchdowns, it would be enough for him to finish the year as a top 24 wide receiver. But this guy has had a season in his career in the NFL where he's scored 10 touchdowns before. He was one of the first reads in this offense the second half of the 2025 season, and his projected ADP is rounds 9 to 11. Who is this wide receiver? It's Jakobi Meyers, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But here's why I think he could do it again. Travis Hunter is going to play a lot more defensive back in 2026. This is because Jakobi Meyers is now in town, and they don't need to rely solely on the offensive ability of Travis Hunter. De'Ami Brown, he's a free agent and likely won't return. And then we have Brian Thomas Jr. He had his skills stolen by the Monstars or something because he regressed a ton in 2025. Now, we may not see huge numbers every single week from Jakobi Meyers in 2026, but he may be one of the most consistent options on a weekly basis. He could give us that flexibility this year to maybe load up on running back early and have him be our late wide receiver 2, maybe even wide receiver 3 on your roster that you can just rely upon weekly in a pretty high-powered offense in Jacksonville. Now, maybe you got Jakobi Meyers right, but can you guess this tight end? Because he averaged 6.1 targets per game. That's more than guys like Juwan Johnson and Jake Ferguson. He averaged 4.4 receptions per game, right there with Tyler Warren. 55 receiving yards a game, that's more than Kyle Pitts and Travis Kelce. He averaged 12.3 yards per reception, that's 5th among all NFL tight ends. He had 48 targets over his last 4 games of the season, including the playoffs. He was 11th among all NFL tight ends with 13 red zone targets. He was 3rd in deep targets with 9 and 4th in air yards with 740. 74.1% of his targets were actually deemed catchable, and his 17-game pace makes him a verge 1,000-yard wide receiver with 70-plus catches. With just 5 touchdowns on the year, that would be enough to make him the tight end 3 overall in fantasy football. This dude just had 6 tutties last year alone, so it's for sure possible. Now, his current projected ADP puts him in the double-digit rounds between rounds 10 and 12. Who is this tight end? It's Colston Loveland of the Chicago Bears. But here's why I think they could do it again. They may be without DJ Moore. There are a lot of rumors circulating that he could be on the way out of Chicago to clear up some cap space. We already know that Olamide Zaccheaus, he's going to be a free agent, and Ben Johnson's first year as head coach in Chicago led them to a top 10 passing offense. They took this kid super early for a reason, and as the 2025 season progressed, he got a bigger and bigger chunk of the offense. On a team that's going to throw as much as Chicago is, with a deep threat that Colston Loveland has turned into in that offense, dude could explode in 2026. But it's things like this that are a real advantage to you as a fantasy football player. Most of your league isn't watching this type of breakdown. They're out there just drafting names. You are drafting roles. Now, if you find any value in this type of video, do me a favor and hit the like button if you haven't already. Comment which player shocked you the most down below in the comment section. And then most importantly, subscribe for more deep diving fantasy edges all off season long.